We had an inmate that brutally assaulted one of our sergeants. Needless to say, it was just a brutal attack. It's something that's shaken us to the core. I can tell you that personally, at a personal level, I've felt so many different feelings over the course of these last 2 days, from anger to being sick, heartbroken, just devastated, just a number of range of emotions. And so what we know, or just the basics just of what transpired that day, is we had an inmate, a jailed inmate that was on his floor, on his housing floor. He went to a scheduled Bible study class. We do have a robust chaplaincy program. He went to that class. During the course of that session, at one point he walked out prior to the ending of it. And as he was returning back to his cell, he made entry into an administrative office where a female sergeant was alone, and ambushed her, and like I said, brutally attacked her. I'll get into a little bit of the logistics of that a little bit, because I know that there might be a lot of questions. But what I do want to say at this point is that, as I said initially, our initial focus is on making sure that our team member has a full range of support that we can offer. Myself and members of our team were by her side that evening at the hospital. I spoke to her then and extended, again, our full support on this horrific situation that no one should ever experience. And so since that point to now, we've extended a full range of different support services. I think for me as a police executive, it was important as well to make sure that I assessed her needs and what she wants. I think it's important, in my opinion, to make sure that we empower her to make those decisions for herself and not assume that we know what she may need or want. So we've gone to great lengths to make sure that we did that, and we're going to continue to take that in mind as we offer her whatever support she may need. No two survivors are alike, and so by person to person, the needs may be different. So she's been surrounded by a lot of love and support from her immediate family, from her law enforcement family. She's loved and respected by so many, so she's got a lot of care. And so that's our first and foremost, that's what we have in mind. At the same time, a criminal investigation was launched into the attack itself. And I know 2 charges of aggravated sexual assault have been filed on Jeremiah Johnson for the alleged attack. And it's my understanding that this individual has prior offenses related to sexual assault. And so all that will be part of the criminal investigation. Second to that, we're also conducting an internal investigation, as we normally do, because we do want to learn from every incident and make sure that we're being thorough, and we owe it to our community and to this agency to make sure that we always learn from each incident to see what possibly could have been done differently and what exactly occurred. One of the common things that sometimes may come up in jail operations is, are persons allowed to roam freely, if you will? I do want to say that most jails do allow some level of open movement. This person was on his floor and had not left his floor. That's not necessarily uncommon. And so they get moved to different locations throughout a facility. At times they may be to medical, at times they may be to some programming. We feel that programming is important because idle time can really create difficult situations in a jail environment if they just have idle time all day. So, we're proud that this year, even through everything that we've gone through with COVID and everything, we've been able to open up jail visitation, for example, to make sure that they have contact with family. and other things like that. So slowly we've been ramping up, some of our additional programming. There are different levels of restrictions that may be in place depending on the inmate's classification. For example, an inmate have full access to go about that floor perhaps, but may not leave that floor. There's also other restrictions that may require a full escort at all times. You have some that may require a full escort when it comes to being handcuffed and what have you. Again, all these are different operational factors that we have to keep in mind. And so all that's going to be part of the review as well to see exactly what happened. But make no mistake about it, is at the end of the day, we have, in my opinion, this is my own opinion, just a bad actor that took advantage of an opening, saw perhaps a gap in the system and manipulated that to his advantage, and at the end of the day committed a very serious and heinous crime. And so there's a lot more I'd like to talk about, my own personal feelings about this individual, but obviously in respecting the ultimate goal of making sure we have a successful prosecution, I do want to just temper some of those comments in terms of my own personal opinions about it, because again, at the end of the day, everybody deserves a fair process, and we want to make sure that we maintain that integrity. So we do have our criminal investigations team that's handling that aspect of it, the criminal charges, what have you, and so they're tasked with that. Second, I'll move to a second topic real quick, and again, we'll circle back with your specific questions. I did want to talk about the recent jail inspection report that we received as well. Not related to this incident, so I want to just mention that it wasn't related to this incident. It's my understanding that previously a complaint had been lodged to the Texas Commission on Jail Standards. I believe it was from the union, mentioning several concerns that they had. It was brought to their attention, and as a result, the Texas Jail Commission did have a special inspection take place, which is unannounced. They show up and they review areas of our operation that they wanted to see. That report has been issued to us this week. I think they're still finalizing some final things in terms of delivery. I'm not sure of that. We did receive it. We're still reviewing it. 3 areas that were mentioned include: 1 was cleanliness and sanitation. 2 was our observational rounds. And 3 was just general staffing in general. Just touching briefly on those without getting too far into the weeds. 1 is we conduct over 6.6 million rounds every single year. I just want to put a little bit of context into this. We have to conduct observational rounds at least every 30 minutes to every hour, depending on the situation, of every person that we have incarcerated and detained that's in our custody and control. And so that's a huge chore. We've made great progress over the years. In 2020, we were able to implement a system called CoreTrack. We used to do paper rounds, but that wasn't always a very effective system in that it had to be handwritten, and so the potential for manipulation could always be present. And so we've now gone to thanks to the investment by Commissioner's Court, we were able to implement a CoreTrack system now that is using technology and leveraging technology, not to do the rounds, but just to document the rounds. So we have much better data now, and we track that daily because it's a key performance indicator for us. It's a key metric that we follow, so our team checks on that. And I want to say that we average always, I wouldn't say always, let me caution that, anywhere between mid to high 90s compliance rate. Keep in mind, an average of 6 million rounds per year that we conduct. I think that's over 100,000 a week that we do. So our compliance rate is high. In relation to the report, I think the underlying factor to that is, well, why are those few missed? Because we didn't miss all, we missed some, quote unquote. So that's where the deeper dive takes in, is could it be that perhaps because of staffing, sometimes it's missed? Now I want to put also a caveat that it is understandable that at times a round may be missed, an observational round. It could be that a fight breaks out, I went out to assist putting out a fight, and that may be a reason, not an excuse, but a reason. Joe Commission will understand that, will review it if it's documented, and they'll take that into consideration. Now, but if it occurs on a regular basis, then perhaps there could be an issue where more staffing is needed. That I want to roll over now into the issue of staffing, which I think is a second one. We do meet minimum jail standards, you know, in terms of staffing. We do have a ratio that we have to meet, 1 to 48. So staffing isn't always an issue, and we have to be very cautious when we're talking about jail operations to say staffing is an issue. That could be used very broadly. We have to understand the ratio is 1 to 48 based on one staff member to every housed inmate. Just to use that as an example, that particular floor on that day, back to the assault that occurred, the ratio was actually 1 to 42, which was actually, we were actually a little bit above it. Now, does that mean that everything is covered? No. One of the things that we have done is we have been engaging with the budget office for performance, to work with them, because we want to exceed minimum staffing efforts. That's something that we've been in talks with. They've been open to those discussions. It's a conversation. It's not simply saying, hey, we need an extra 1,000 people. You know, on their end, they would like to see, okay, can you explain it? Can we better understand it? Because this is what happens, folks. If I'm assigned to do this right now, but if I get called out to do something else, then yeah, technically this is being left aside so I could go do something else. And sometimes that's what maybe something else is lacking, where there may not be the cleanliness to the level that we would like to see, where if I have somebody assigned to cleaning and they could do that their entire shift, then they could handle that. So instead they may get moved. That's what we want to exceed, that, because our goal is to be a center of excellence when it comes to corrections operations. That's what we strive for. We've gone to great lengths over the last couple of years. We probably have, with the leadership of Chief of Corrections Herklotz, the most experienced corrections team that we've ever had in the Harris County jail system, simply because we wanted to put it more in the hands of professionals. Now, when you're talking about the largest jail in Texas and the third largest in the country, it's a city within a city. It's a huge operation. And so I think it's important to note that it just doesn't change on a dime. Third issue, basically I'll touch on, is just the cleanliness and sanitation. That just includes pockets where certain things, were cluttered. It could be a cell, it could be, and that's the inmates' belongings or things that they may have in there. It could be other things. It could be, I believe there were some stains from the mops and things like that on the wall, some grime. Those are the type of issues. And so all of those are things that we feel are fixable. I want to point out again, it wasn't in relation to this particular thing. It was just the timing that the report landed on this week, but I did want to take this opportunity just to mention, because I know it's known that we received it. We'll be listed as non-compliance temporarily as we work through those with the Jail Commission. We're already working on a corrective plan so that they can have that, and that we could try to keep improving and hopefully get out of non-compliant status soon. The third one that I just want to touch on, because it comes up sometimes, is the number of jail deaths. I want to say that this calendar year we're at 21. I know that overall around the state, the commission has seen an increase overall in the number of deaths within jail facilities. It's something that's unfortunate. Our goal is always 0. I take it very personal and difficulty. I mean, and it's difficult for me when anyone in our care and custody dies. I take it very personal and try to see what could have done better. Again, putting it in context, there's a jail with half the population that we do, and I believe they're around the same number. And I think it's important, just for educational purposes for our community, to understand that of the 21 that mentioned, 9 were due to illness or medical causes. It could be some, diabetes. We have, the jail population tends to be a lot less healthier than the average population, just because we deal a lot with individuals with mental illness, with addiction, and what have you. So that 9 are due to just medical reasons. Of those, 4 were related to COVID. The entire year, even though we had surges in COVID throughout the year, but thanks to our medical team that's done yeoman's work to try to limit that exposure within the jail that tends to be a petri dish for the spread of illness. They've been able to manage that as good. Everybody coming in gets tested. That's an inmate. So we try to protect them as well from exposure, but it does happen, as well as I believe there was one suicide that occurred, something that we worked very hard to try to reduce. I believe we've had one. We didn't have one last year, if I remember correctly. So we've really made great strides in trying to reduce that. Thanks again to the work of the team that's on the front lines there. 2 are considered accidental with an overdose component to it. 1 was in our booking area, and I'm not a doctor, but we believe, based on the report, that had already ingested the narcotics and overdosed while waiting in the booking facility area. So, but it's still considered a death in custody. And the other one, we believe, was an overdose. Unfortunately, in any jail operation, there's going to be some contraband that does make its way in, and we believe it was an overdose of some kind. And so I just want to put the range of things, and we had, I don't think it's been ruled yet, so it's probably in the category. 9 are still pending medical examiner reports, but we believe 1 was the death of Mr. Harris that was assaulted and reported by, that we reported at the hands of another inmate. He was charged with that murder, and there was another one that was deemed a homicide. It's still under investigation. We took administrative action on those employees. We know it wasn't a popular move by many internally, but it was the right thing, we believe, to do, and we took care to make sure we held people accountable based on our findings, and I think that is still a pending criminal investigation with the City of Houston, Houston Police Department. Operating the largest jail in Texas comes with a lot of complexity, and especially when you put it in the backdrop of a COVID surge, where we had a lot of people out as well that were impacted, our workforce especially during the summer. The slowdown in the courts, I think, has been significant. We've been working a lot behind the scenes. I know Commissioner's Court, Judge Hidalgo's had meetings. I know personally, because I've attended some, that Commissioner Garcia has convened with a lot of stakeholders to try to tackle the backlogs. Commissioner's Court has invested a lot to try to deal with those backlogs. Why is that important? Is because it's really impacting jail operations. We're seeing probably the highest number of serious offenders that we've ever had. I can't measure it historically, but at least in recent years, it's at a very high. We have a total of 8,800 individuals right now, as we speak, that are either medium or high maximum classification. Of those, 6,200 are going to be maximum classification. What does that mean? Is that we're talking about serious offenders that probably have some type of assaultive history. They're generally bad actors. When we talk about all the news that gets covered on crime in our community, which is significant, those individuals, law enforcement is doing a great job of arresting and getting many people off the streets, but somebody has to care for them while they're waiting for their day in court. So our staff, I commend them because they do yeoman's work every day. They look, I was a cop, I was a homicide detective, I did all those things. When we did our thing, we came, we turned them over to the jail, we're gone. We continue with the investigation. Our team here has to deal with them every single day, and you're talking about some very tough actors. So our maximum security, we've seen a shift, and it's gone higher. It's even gone higher than yet. So we're dealing with a very complicated population that doesn't want to be incarcerated. When you slow the courts down further, you have that idle time, more hostility. Many times it is turned on our staff, our personnel. So far, we've reported approximately 1,200 assaults from inmates on our staff. Now, again, just to throw the caveat, that's a range of things. It could be throwing urine on them, it could be throwing feces, it could be an all-out assault. 1,200 out of approximately 100 bookings that we have every year. Every year through our doors walks over 100,000 inmates. that walk through our doors. So yes, you are going to have some bad situations occur. I wish I would say it was a sterile situation. It's not. Our team could use more staff. Our team is overworked many times. We had to go to extended hours, not unique to Harris County. Across the country, we've talked to Bexar County, we've talked to others, the same thing, extended hours. Attrition is difficult. And in fact, I was encouraged because some of the moves that we've done lately have resulted in our lowest attrition rate in November that we've had probably over the course of the entire year. That's progress. And so if anybody suggests that nothing has been done to address any of these things, I would just say that that's simply inaccurate. Some of the things that we did was we redeployed some people to our backgrounds and recruiting team so we could make sure that we were processing new candidates for hire much quicker. Now, we can't just take someone off the street, throw them in the jail and say, okay, go on the floors. We've got to make sure that they have some level of training. Our academy team has done a great job in preparing them. We've revamped our onboarding process so it could be a more effective process for new hires so they can get acclimated to a jail setting. It's a very challenging environment. I believe they should be more well paid, and I'm going to continue to advocate for our jail personnel to get paid more and receive a more significant raise than what we've already done over the course of the years. That's something that we'll work with Commissioner's Court. This year we were able to get some hazard pay for some of them because of the extreme hardships that they have to deal with. We've also made sure that we are working on a new staffing plan, like I said, to hopefully onboard more people. Commissioner's Court has been very supportive in providing us here recently the added positions that we needed. Again, we still have to bring them on board and hire them and screen people. It's not for everyone. So it takes a bit of time for that, but they are working on that and working, or at least working with us to try to get to a more optimal staffing plan. We were also able to redeploy people, personnel from patrol and law enforcement over to our court system. That's also part of our court, our jail operations. So we were able to redeploy personnel. We've done that. We're continuing to do that. We're thinking outside the box and trying to see how we could meet this moment. We've also just continue to just seek ways to back to the staffing. We're already working on a new plan that we hope to roll out in January, where just about every member of our operations team in the jail will have a part of the weekend off. We want them to have more stable work hours so they're not stretched so thin and they don't have an opportunity to experience some of the weekend shift work could be very challenging. So we're working on that as well. So we are making tremendous progress. There's a lot of things that we still need to work on. And like I always say, look, some things we do good, some things we do great, and some things we obviously need to do better. But the other things as well that I just want to add to the challenges is that we are working well with the state to transport more people that have been adjudicated over to the state system. At this writing today, we have 275 people that are scheduled to go to the state system to complete their sentences. So at times that was slower because the state also was impacted by COVID, so their number of pickups had decreased a lot. So what happens? That backs us up. We don't have a choice. We can't send them anywhere. So now our population continues to increase. A lot of those assaultive behaviors as well that I mentioned were at the peak of the summer when we were even, our population was at its maximum, and we have been pretty much at maximum population. But we're considering other options as well. We have been exploring the possibility of having to outsource again. It's something that by practice I've tried to stay away with as much as I could. But we are entertaining that possibility. It's a little bit different this time because in the past there were more beds available in the state. This time, because the state is occupying those beds for their own operations, we're more limited. So we may have to consider out-of-state housing for some as a means to, again, continue to aggressively attack this until we could bring staffing to the point that it needs, that it's safe not only for our personnel and our workforce, but for the people that are under our care and control and custody. It's important for the courts to get moving. Also, again, just an added data point, the average length of stay in the Harris County Jail right now, and keep in mind these are pretrial individuals, hovers around 200 days, and you put it on average around the state, it's about 60 days. County jails are not meant to be long-term stays. So what happens, all the perfect storm of high population, little movement, little court movement, and we're working tirelessly with all stakeholders. We've done so much to try to unclog the system, if you will. We meet regularly with all the different stakeholders. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. There's a lot of frustration with that because we're just one cog of a bigger criminal justice system. All we do is house people. We don't determine who comes in and who goes out. So we're dependent on those other pieces working as efficient and effectively as possible. And also when I'm talking about the length of stay, the individuals that I mentioned, 21 that have died, if you take an average, they had been here an average of 165 days in jail, meaning that if you look at it, that's above, almost double the average of what the state average should be in terms of housing in a county jail system. I'm not talking about, my thing is if they're guilty, you know what, hold them accountable, move to the state system. But jails weren't designed for long-term stays. That goes back to, it really taxes the system in terms of cleanliness and other things. So, so that's it in a nutshell. I'm going to just briefly try to recap just quickly in Spanish, and then I'll get to the questions, because I know that's what everybody's probably waiting for. Estamos aquí esta mañana para avisar de un evento que ocurrió, un asalto contra uno de nuestras sargentas que ocurrió el lunes, aproximadamente a las 1:45 a 2 de la tarde. El sujeto estaba yendo a una clase de religión. Él tiene el derecho de hacer eso. Estaba en el piso donde él vive, donde está asignado. Terminó la clase él antes de que terminara la clase de completo, pero él terminó y salió a salir. Iba a regresar a su sitio donde está su celda, cuando obviamente encontró una puerta que estaba abierta. Estaba nuestra sargenta ahí. Él entró, cerró la puerta y la comenzó a atacar brutalmente. Ya han puesto 2 cargos contra ese sujeto, el Jeremiah Johnson. Hay una investigación criminal y también hay una investigación interna que vamos a hacer para ver cómo pasó esto. Nuestra prioridad es de estar viendo que nuestra compañera tenga todos los recursos que ella necesita mientras que navegamos esta trauma y ver cómo podemos mejorar de todo eso. También, aparte de eso, recibimos un reporte de inspección del Estado, lo estamos revisando. Son 3 áreas que no estaban al nivel que deben de estar, entonces ya estamos actuando para mejorar esas situaciones. Y también la tercera cosa que mencioné, hemos tenido este año 21 personas que han muerto dentro de nuestra cárcel, pero di los diferentes motivos, no son todos por situación violenta. A veces mueren por través de enfermedad, como el público en general. Puede ser diabetes, un infarto de corazón, muchos diferentes temas son los que pasan. Entonces nuestro enfoque va a ser de mejorar toda esta situación. Estamos destrozados en este momento por lo que le pasó a nuestra compañera, pero vamos a seguir adelante y es nuestra meta. Just in closing, the formal parts of this, I just want to say that our entire Harris County Sheriff's Office family is just very, very devastated by what happened. It's been a very challenging year for everyone. I want to commend them publicly for all their hard work. As difficult as this is, I know that they suit up every day. We meet the challenge of the moment, and we'll continue to move forward from this, keeping our team member in support, and more broadly with the other challenges that we have to overcome them. I personally care deeply for our team members, and we're going to do everything we can to make this better, to make sure that our facility is safe for our team members, for the members that work here, but also for those that are under our care and custody and control. We take this extremely seriously, and while at the moment we're heartbroken and devastated, we do ask for our community support and patience as we try to navigate through this. I do want to also mention in closing that one of the things we did back in January of 2020 is we brought in a professional psychologist, Dr. Seals, that now oversees our behavioral health division, and I think it's a wonderful move. It was the first time in our agency that we had launched something like that, so we could look after the well-being and care of our team members at all levels. So his team became more fully operational in April of 2020. They've been hands-on working around the clock, meeting with our teammates to deal with any grief or trauma that they may be experiencing at this moment. Also want to commend our partners, Wayne Young at the Harris Center. They've also been part of this response to make sure that we're providing counseling services for our team members that may want it. Whether in private or in a group setting or whatever, we're making ourselves available to that. And I also have reached out myself to one of our most trusted organizations and community agencies, the Houston Area Women's Center, where I've talked to the president and CEO, Emily Whitehurst, just because I have a great deal of respect for her and the entire team at Hawk with their expertise when it comes to domestic violence and sexual assault violence, to make sure that we're not missing anything in our approach, that we're being thorough and not just getting tunnel vision and thinking that we're covering everything. I'm reaching out to external partners, and she, has been very helpful. So, we're gonna. I've learned, or I understand as a police executive, that despite the immense challenges of the moment or at any given time, I always come back to span of control. And my focus will be on what we can control right now, what we can improve on right now, where can we make a difference, where can we move forward from this. And so that's what my commitment is. So I'm going to pause there, and I'll start opening up with questions. Sinjin?
I have a couple of real quick questions, Sheriff. It's my understanding that jail has basically been working on overtime staffing for kind of as a routine matter for many years, which means you've got jailers who are having to work routinely 60 hours and maybe as much as 80 hours in some circumstances, and that is a big factor driving burnout. Why would a jailer want to work here if they're having to work those hours? And sort of following that, what resources realistically do you need from the Commissioner's Court to not have jailers working such long, dangerous hours?
I think the first question dealt with the long hours, the potential for burnout. Why would anybody want to work here? That's one of the tremendous challenges that we have. Is many times it's one of the most challenging work environments. It doesn't pay a lot. It's underappreciated. A lot of the community doesn't understand it. I compared a lot to kind of, what the medical community has had to endure during the pandemic. Long hours, burnout, tough conditions. That's what our folks have to deal with. I wish it was easy. I wish I could explain it and say it's all going to be great. It's not. It's challenging, but I admire our team so much that day in and day out they still show up. The winter storm wreaked havoc on us, the pandemic, all these things we have to deal with, but they still show up. And I think hopefully it's a testament that over the years we have tried to do things like when it was available to try to create a better track. Many of them eventually want to go into a policing career, and we've opened up those opportunities where in the past they had kind of been again stagnant. We've created some of that. We've just try to do what we could to make it better for them as best we could under the toughest environments. Why they still do, it's just a testament to their tenacity and work, but it's not sustainable. And so it's something that we want to do. Our behavioral health team does visit with quite a few. It's obviously confidential. I don't know but we provide counseling support to them. We've tried to do,
Sorry, Sheriff, just to interrupt if you don't mind, but the Sheriff's Office, even before your arrival here,
correct,
was using this high, long hour model where you're forcing jailers to work overtime. What do you need from, I know that
I was going to get to that. That's your second.
I know that the Jail Commission came and talked to you and Judge Hidalgo at the start of her tenure, discussing some of these issues. What do you need from Lena and from Commissioner's Court to get out of this cycle?
Yeah. To get after that cycle, I think a couple things. One is they are helping us tackle the backlog. Now, they're just a funding source. We still need the other stakeholders in that system to get the courts moving. Because, again, one of the metrics is an average length of stay of 200 days. That's just simply not sustainable. We need people to end up being diverted to where they need to be, whether it be the state system, cases be, completed. That needs to move. It puts a big burden on our operations. That's important. Number two, I think we're talking to them, and what we need is to have the continued conversation of saying minimum staffing, and I think this touches to your point, isn't sustainable. That's what we've gotten by all these years. We've always kind of used that as the foundation to say, this is where we need to meet, and it fluctuates sometimes. And because there is high turnover in this type of profession, you're always kind of trying to catch up. We were able to start making progress. Like I said, I noted the lowest attrition number in November, and I think that's because we've hiring at a much faster clip. We've redone our onboarding process to bring more people on board. So if you took the last few months, we're doing fantastic. We're bringing a lot of people into the system. We're better preparing them to take on the tough challenge. Before it was just, all right, thank you, fresh body, go and work the floor. Now we're kind of indoctrinating them into a jail system a little bit better. And so what we need now is to try to say we need to exceed minimum standards. And I think that's the point that we need their help with, is to say, we appreciate what you've assisted us with. You're helping us, but it's not gonna get us where we need to get. We're gonna need more bodies. We've shared that information with them to say, this is minimum standard, we need to get to this number. Now, obviously.
So how many bodies?
Chief Herclock, do you remember the high number? I think it was an extra 700?
It's between 550 and 700.
We would need about another 550 to 700 new personnel to be added. Now,
do you think Commissioner's Court is like on the same page with that? Or or this is going to be a thing where they say, we don't want to spend this money?
Look, every time they've been supportive whenever we've come to them. I think right now we're dealing with the budget office, and so I think that's a gatekeeper, if you will, that has to dissect the numbers. I don't work that area, so they'd have to speak to what, their due diligence, because there is a budgetary impact to this, and I understand, having been on that side of the seat at one point in my career, that you have to look at budgets and all those things. With that said, it's critical that we exceed minimum staffing, and I think that's our first. The other thing would be potentially for us to outsource until we could lessen some of the pressure population-wise. And the other thing is, of courts, if things started moving more efficiently, then there would be a quicker management of population. Those things are out of my control. So it's not one thing, but specific to your question, adding additional staff would be the most helpful.
And just
how many open positions are at the jail right now? Do you know, and how does it compare?
I think right now, open positions, when we meet minimum standard, I think we're fully staffed right now, right? Because the recent hiring, I think we're about fully staffed right now, but it meets minimum standards. Again, we meet the minimum. We could do things, but it doesn't mean that it's being done at the optimum level. Now it still could get done. It's just little things start getting missed, like something didn't get cleaned, a round was missed. It's not anything huge, but there are certain things that may take lesser priority if we had more optimum. It would be like the equivalent of a restaurant, right? If you have wait staff, we go and they tell you, be patient because we're short on staff right now, and you go and you might have to wait a little bit longer. That if they were fully staffed and people were hiring and staying on the job, you'd get a quicker response.
Have you asked for more resources, and have you received?
We have received what we've been asked for. We got another infusion of additional, an extra 100 here recently, but the conversation of that's just getting us by. We haven't quite gotten to that finish line of saying we still need more. This is getting us by. You're doing that. They're providing that. But we're at a gap right now in terms of what we think is optimum, and that review is happening with them as we speak. They are having that conversation. It hasn't been finalized. So I'm not saying they will or will not. Huh?
The Commissioner's Court is having that?
The budget office is having that. The budget team is kind of the one that looks at the numbers, looks at the staffing. They are having that conversation. They are aware of that. We have talked about the more dangerous profile that we're seeing in our maximum
And
classifications.
with that, you can ask the state of Texas, if there's state jail standards, then I would imagine jailers across Texas could step in. And we're at a point in time in which the governor has sent, I don't know how many DPS troopers to the border, including Galveston County constables. So I know that resources across the state can be shared. If you're talking about 6,000 plus maximum inmates here, we now know what can happen when someone saw a gap in the system. Can you ask the state for help until the county finds the money?
Frankly, I don't know if it's necessarily that they don't have the money. I mean, that would be a budgetary question. I don't keep up with the.
But this is the largest jail in Texas.
Correct.
And that's something that seems like it might be available.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is.
Yeah, I don't know. The powers of the governor for what he's doing with the border, I think, are much
But
more
you don't
expansive.
ask the
That
state
would
for
we.
help.
No, I don't think I mean, there's some serious challenges here. And again, we're talking about like the report and then obviously what happened. So I just want to speak just generally. There's some things that need improvement, but I do not believe structurally that the jail is broken per se. I think that the conversation we're having is one of how do we continue. My mantra is always continuous improvement. We are getting the people. We're doing much better now like I said, the ratio on that floor that day, minimum is 1 to 48. I think we were 1 to 42. So we were actually a little bit ahead on that particular floor. So it's not like, oh my God, during the peak in the summer, we were scrambling around trying to, hey, let me move you from here to this assignment. We were trying to scramble around. We're not in that type of desperation mode right now. Our population had gotten a little bit better a few weeks ago. We were optimistic, and now it's trending back upward. But I think it's still about, just because we're not in crisis today per se, it doesn't mean we won't be tomorrow. And it means also that this changes the dynamic of what happened because we could see the worst of what could happen.
Who discovered her on Monday? How was that found? I know what the attack was, but what happened? How long was she? How many minutes passed with this?
It happened pretty quickly. I'm letting the investigation kind of take its course. Obviously, like I said earlier, my main focus was just on her and making sure. But do you know like somebody found her?
She made a phone call.
She made a phone call to. We did have 2 supervisors on the floor that day. She was one. We had another one on the floor. They were many times they're in the same office. And it's not uncommon to have the door propped open as well. I just want to say that. Anecdotally, many times they have it open just because it's hard to hear if you close that door. It's a jail building. And so sometimes they leave it open.
So if he's going back and forth routine for Bible study, is there a chance you think, are you all investigating to see if she was targeted? She caught his eye, going back and forth?
He wasn't going back and forth. It was just, he went to class.
I just mean in his time.
Yeah, and then as he went back, I don't know what went in his mind. He's just a predator. I think sometimes individuals like this, and I'm not speaking for him, just sees an opportunity, manipulates it, and I think, I mean, again, I can't speak for what was in his mind or
You
how
just
it
said
happened.
that you met that ratio on that day, but the report says that supervisors, people with essential positions were taken from their duties and they were brought in to meet that ratio. I just want to be clear, on this day, do you think that female sergeant that was assaulted has a direct correlation with the fact, is it a result of the jail being understaffed?
I would not go there yet. I want to say, to your point, that sometimes other individuals are used to meet other duties and for racial purposes. That's appropriate. There's nothing wrong if you're doing a certain duty today to be moved to help cover something else. It's not optimal, it's not ideal, but that is at times an operational need. On this particular day, we were staffed to the floor. Now, people are doing their work though. We have rovers, but for example, if we have 4 rovers and one gets moved to take somebody to the clinic, somebody gets pulled to go deal with an inmate issue, others to do something else, then it is busy. And I mean, yeah, in a perfect world, if you had even more people, but you don't have people to the level, you're going to be assigned to this door and watch over this administrative office 24/7. It's not that level of detail. And so.
So you're not ready, though, to say that this was a result of short
What I just want to say is, look, staffing impacts all these things. In a perfect world, that we have more people and they were just extra, that's where we want to get to, where we have more, that if somebody gets pulled away, that there's maybe not lessened supervision. But I can't say today without, days in already to say, because everything gets lumped into, it's a staffing issue. We had a client, an inmate, Fred Harris, that was killed recently by an assault. And I mentioned, look, assaultive behavior doesn't stop because somebody comes into the jail. If somebody's going to want to beat somebody, it's going to happen quickly. It happens. That's not necessarily an issue of staffing all the time. It may, but I want to caution, just because it's so easy to just say everything's staffing. And I think there's some things that staffing played a part, but it's hard for me to say today that had we had, now again, if we had unlimited people on the floor, then would be so saturated that perhaps it would be better, but we just don't know today.
And last question, you said that he was free, that it's common in jails for them to not have a supervisor. Is it true that on December 4th he was listed as a high-risk inmate? And if you are listed as a high-risk inmate, do you need to have somebody with you at all times?
He was listed as a maximum classification. Like I mentioned earlier, we have approximately 6,200 people, so the vast majority of our jail, we're at 8,800 people total population right now. So the vast majority are high. The other 2,000 plus are medium, and then the lesser hundreds would be low level. We don't have a lot of low risk classification people at this point. So it doesn't also, there's different levels of maximum classification. We have some that are separated, that simply are too assaultive, a danger to themselves, to somebody else. It's other factors. They're more on a lockdown setting. We have to be cautious as well, because we don't want to abuse that process, because some systems are so abusive that just put people on lockdown 24/7, and it's not healthy for anyone. It's not the right approach management-wise. It creates more hostility. You may be a classification where you're maximum, but you require an escort, and you may be maximum that you don't require an escort. You could move around your floor.
What was his case?
He was maximum. I'm still investigating in terms of what level he was in the specific, did he need an escort or not. That's part of our internal investigation. Let me get somebody new real quick.
What's planned to, are there any plans to make any changes right now today? I've heard from a number of deputies that they were concerned for safety even before this happened.
Yeah.
They had written several letters a couple months ago saying that they were concerned about the increased number of weapons being found in the jail, drugs, fights that were happening between the inmates, and the inmates were betting on who would win. And so they were already concerned for safety. I'm wondering if anything was done as a result of those letters, and now they're saying that they're all out afraid. And so I'm wondering what's being done right now today so that this doesn't happen anymore in the future.
Well, I want to just maybe start with the last one. You said they're just afraid. I mean, this is traumatic on our entire agency. She is well loved and respected by many. It shakes one to the core, because this is so unusual. We do have assaults that happen. I mentioned that we've had, I believe, 1,200 to date, just inmates on and that's a range of things. It could be minimal. I pushed, that's an assault. So 1,200 out of 100,000 bookings per year that we have. So these are things that we do deal with. The concerns, we have been addressing them. We have been working on them. That's where we worked to try to increase our staffing. We're increasing our staffing. We're dealing, part of the onboarding now into the jail, when somebody new, we put them on teams to go and help seek out that contraband that does make it in. Look, anybody that works corrections will tell you, without delving too much into details, we get creative folks that come through here. They'll find ways to create. Anybody that has experience in corrections will tell you, how did they end up getting drugs? How did they end up coming up with machineries to do tattoo machines. And many times, sometimes where we get called out on our reports is on intercoms being damaged. Well, they manipulate them, you know, and it's like we have to constantly be improving those things. So we do pay attention to those things. We are working closely with our team. We feel, again, the attrition's gotten better in terms of, I feel that they do see we did move bailiffs at times to come fill in and help out. We're moving people from patrol to come meet the jail. Keep in mind that we also have crime issues in the community. So it's not easy decisions. We're having to address crime, but now we're moving them into another part of the operation. These are calculated decisions that we have to make, that I take as a police executive, a lot of things into that calculus of what's the best decision. So it's not an easy fix that from one day or another we're going to deal with. I think that we have a plan that we're tackling now to scarf out more of the contraband, cleanliness. This team that we have in place right now that over the last 2 months has been in place has really helped increase a little bit of the cleanliness and bring in more people on the force. And I think we've heard anecdotally that our personnel are noticing that there are more people that are being hired. And before it was a slower onboarding, now I think they're visually seeing more people here.
Sheriff, one final question from me, if you will. Over the last few years, there have been, I believe, 11 inspections by the jail commission. 2 were annuals, I believe, and then 9 other special inspections. Most of those you have not been in compliance in some form or another, and I know you hired Shannon from the jail commission. What is keeping you from keeping the jail compliant with minimum jail standards?
You know, it always disappoints me when we don't fail an inspection, when we fail an inspection in some level. I think they measure about 23 different categories. I think most times it's been just a handful where we were deficient, but at times we've really been deficient. And at times it's just been more where we just need a little bit of technical assistance. I think it's important to note that we've always been able to come back into compliance, most times pretty quickly. But I think it's always an issue of look, there's always going to be changes in personnel that come in and out. One of the challenges that we have in our operations is that people come into the jail, they don't necessarily want to stay here a long time because we bring supervisors that have promoted, they come into a jail and then they want to go back to law enforcement. They've already did their time as a detention officer and now as a supervisor. They don't want to stay here very long. So we're trying to change that. The team has talked a lot about changing that culture. It takes a good 5-6 years to change a culture of an operation. We're not there yet. I think that what's keeping us at the end of the day, if I were to look back, has been that I think we've always been okay with just having minimum staffing because we thought that was a benchmark. As long as we were so fixated on meeting ratio, that saying, let's meet ratio 1:48, that and until Chief Herklotz has really been that leading this effort to kind of bring more awareness to say, look, just because we meet minimum, it doesn't mean something else isn't lacking. And to, I think, your point of, Chelsea, I think, or someone mentioned it, about where you're sometimes moving people over here, yes. The more that happens and there's less specialization, the more that something's going to fall through the gaps, something's going to happen. At times, it's been piss poor supervision, frontline, that weren't doing their jobs. We try to hold them accountable. It's a big operation, that's going to happen. At times, it's just they were stretched too thin. And so I think the bottom line is we should have more people to more adequately tackle the level. I want to mention that they hold us to the same standard that they meet a small jail of 10 people. So it's sometimes like, whoa, we have the largest one, the small, they get measured the same. Ironically, in a conversation with them, I said, hey, I'm just curious, like, does anybody ever meet 100% in rounds? And like, you'd be surprised, we have a small jail where they have a dispatcher that serves as a jailer and a dispatcher, and he or she has missed the round because she was taking a 911 call, and it's like, wow, I never thought a dispatcher would have to also function as a jailer. I think bottom line that is, but as a police executive, I'm not going to use excuses. Always try to be transparent. Look, the buck stops with me. I take it very personally. If we haven't gotten it right, then I haven't done enough yet to get us to where we need to be. We've done some things better, but at the end of the day, I'm not just going to say staffing was the issue and give us staffing, because I always challenge my teams. They'll always say, we just need more people, and that's a go-to answer for everything. And I always say, let's look deeper. What else could we be doing to correct things? And are we duplicating too much, that we're putting too much of a burden? And we've worked on that. Before, they were saying, we have to do all these reports, and we get stretched doing reports, and then I got to go handle something else. We've streamlined a lot of that. But we've had to get the technology and things like that. But I'm being too wordy, but I think I hopefully answered your question.
We have time for one more
Just
question.
some clarification, Sheriff. We've been told that surveillance cameras shows that he was in that room in her office for 13 minutes. I'm wondering if that's the case, and then also, as the head of the operation, and as other things come up, as you have to, deal with lots of other things, do you feel like you've been distracted in any way away from the jail, or do you feel like you have put ample time and attention into the jail?
No, we've put ample time. Well, let me first address the first one. I'm just not going to delve into the amount of time, because first of all, frankly, I just don't know, and I didn't want to. Sometimes they'll say the initial would appear to be a certain time frame, and it turns out to be something. I'm like, look, let's get it right. Let's tighten up exactly what happened so that I could understand. I don't know if it was 13 minutes, 14, 15, less, and so I really can't speak to the amount of time. In terms of distraction, no, I mean, we meet regular basis on dealing a lot on jail issues. Every week we meet to talk about jail issues. The team is very engaged. We're always in and out of the system on a regular basis. We even have majors such as Major Whitaker that doesn't even work in the jail, that's been coming lately. He oversees background and recruiting just to see how he could help with retention. We're going to do more of that. So I think we're very engaged. I don't think it's an issue. I mean, like I said, we have the most experienced corrections team we've ever had in the history. It takes a little bit of time, so I don't think the distractions are any issue in my mind. In my opinion.
¿Había o no suficiente personal el día que ocurrió ese incidente en la cárcel?
Sí teníamos suficiente personal. En lo que miramos, típicamente requiere el Estado que tengamos un empleado por cada 48 personas que están presos en un sitio. En ese piso ese día teníamos una persona por cada 42 personas. Teníamos 2 supervisores en ese piso. En ese día sí teníamos suficiente personal, pero obviamente cuando pasa un incidente, uno quiere decir que lástima que no teníamos a alguien ahí más presente o alguien ahí fijo. Es lo mismo que pasa en la comunidad cuando pasa una tragedia. Dijimos, hijo, ¿por qué no está? ¿Dónde estaba un policía cuando lo necesitaba en ese incidente? Esta persona manipuló esta situación, ve una entrada que pudo manipular y así es como pasó, y pues vamos a investigar para ver cómo podemos prevenir esto.
Hay temor en los trabajadores y también hay algunas mujeres que son oficiales de detención que han estado renunciando debido a ese incidente.
A mí no me han dicho de qué tantas personas han renunciado. Yo entiendo, como mencioné hace poco, esto nos ha tramado a todos y queremos también tener más atención para las mujeres que trabajan dentro del sistema, tenemos muchas mujeres y queremos que sigan trabajando aquí y queremos que sepan que van a tener nuestro apoyo. No tengo todas las respuestas en este momento de cómo vamos a mejorar con todo, pero estamos dándole seguimiento a diferentes ideas para ver cómo podemos mejorar las cosas.
Finalmente, tu postura sobre la cuestión de la inspección y los resultados.
Sí, no, pues ya estamos tratando de formular una respuesta para ver cómo podemos mejorar esas 3 áreas. Yo no pensamos que son áreas que no se pueden superar. Son áreas que tenemos conocimiento de qué es lo que pasó y cómo podemos mejorar en eso. Al final, sí vamos a necesitar más personal. Estamos trabajando con la mesa directiva, con la oficina de la juez y los comisionadores para tratar de tener más empleados. Nos han estado apoyando en eso, pero queremos exigir aún más personal, entonces estamos teniendo esas conversaciones con ellos.
Y la gente que políticamente está metiéndose en este asunto, específicamente tratando de decir que necesitan al Estado ustedes para poder lidiar con la situación en la cárcel, ¿qué le dices a esos funcionarios o actores políticos?
Yo les pediría que, mira, hay que tener un poquito de paciencia. En mi opinión, hasta el Estado nos dice en el reporte que sí estamos con el mínimo de personal, no es como si tenemos, vayan a ver, les digo, en cualquier parte de los Estados Unidos, a otras cárceles en el estado para que miren la misma situación que están pasando. No voy a mencionar otros sistemas en el estado, pero no es algo único lo que está pasando aquí. Y quiero poner eso en mente. Sí. I'll just go ahead and just
Can I
squeeze in one or
one
two
thing?
more. Okay,
Just
go ahead.
because
Go ahead.
Covering these
Go
types
ahead.
of crimes, I need to make sure absolutely that I also paint the person more than just a victim. I have yet to hear about her. I know how sad and angry everybody in the sheriff's office is. I can understand the need for privacy, but can you tell us about her? How old she was? Did you promote her to this administrative position? Is she a mother? Is she a wife? Like, who is she as a human being?
I just want to be a little bit careful because I don't want to speak too much about
I understand
in
that.
general. I did meet with her. She's been a longtime member of this agency. It's very touching for me to see across the agency how many people have told me, I worked with her, I knew her, I worked in this assignment with her. She's such she's a veteran of our agency, and she's just a wonderful person and team member. You know, both hats she wears, I have met with her, visited. I'm trying again, as I mentioned earlier, is in my experience, every survivor, no two survivors are alike. And so I want to be sensitive to making sure we're empowering her to say, this is what I need, not us just bombarding her, even though everybody wants to help. And then we'll see to what level she wants more disclosure of more of her profile. But that's to the extent that I can say.
Did you promote her to this position? Or was she
I
already-
don't think I promoted her. I think she was already a sergeant.
Is she 60?
I'm not going to talk about her age.
Sheriff, what is your position on the state's finding, and as a result from Monday's attack, has anyone from management been replaced? If no, why not? If yes, how so?
Well, the report, I think I already touched on the report. We're already working on a response. You know, we, as I've told Director Wood, I've always appreciated their oversight. We get scrutinized at a very high level, and I think that's good. I think the public should have that level of scrutiny. So a lot of our blemishes are going to be known to public in some form or fashion, you know, and so I think that's good that there's that level of oversight. I've explained that we're held at the same standard, even compared to a small jail. So if you go and you say, wow, why is that house so clean and yours is, look, there's always going to be some level of, when you're talking about a jail that's almost at full capacity of a level of uncleanliness sometimes, is because you have a lot of people that don't want to be here. Frankly, I mean, nobody wants to be here, and they're staying here for extended periods of time. Nothing in that report that I would feel is unsurmountable or something out of the ordinary per se. I think even they admit that it's meeting minimum jail staffing levels, but it should exceed that. And I think that they feel that those areas of deficiencies are probably a result of staffing. There's nothing that's come to light to say that anyone personally did anything nefarious or to the level that would require any kind of change. I have full confidence in our jail team. Like I said, they're the most experienced we've had. Obviously, we assess those things as we go along because I think we owe it to the public to always make sure we have the right people in place. We've made changes in the past for a variety of reasons. But as I said, there's also an internal review. And if we uncover something that we think rises to the level that something was done inappropriately or wasn't done correctly that requires that level, we could always take appropriate action, whether it be disciplinary, all the way to termination on something, if it comes to that. It's still too early. We're days out of this.
What's the current jail population, and how does it compare to 2019?
Our overall numbers, we're always going to average about 100,000. I think last year we were around 80-something thousand. I think due to just the COVID and the community and other things, it was just a little bit lower. We're about 100,000 now, so it's on average with what happens. But on average, this year we've been almost exceedingly high, almost where at times we were almost to no beds available. That's not a good place to be. We can't just move people and say, hey, can you take them into your house for a while? And when you hear about the backdrop of the serious crime happening in our community. They go somewhere, well, they come into a jail system, and when the jails are backed up, it just leaves that more serious offender stuck here without really being held accountable. And sometimes they just feel more empowered sometimes that, hey, nothing's going to happen. I'm stuck. It's not like they're going to take me to court, and and so all these things just, again, are factors.
Is the suspect in solitary confinement right now?
For the moment, yes.
You said administrative separation.
Administrative separation, which I mentioned before, is one of the categories that some of the more serious offenders, or depending on certain criteria, may be placed in that situation.
And just really quickly, what do you have to say to, there was a senator who basically said that he thinks that there should be a state takeover. What's your response to that?
I don't think that would be an appropriate response. I mean, again, what happened in this situation is horrific. Now, we're talking about the other issues. Look, I understand, I know that a lawsuit was filed, and I think the proper venue for that is when a lawsuit's filed, it's handled through the courts. To me, a lot of those issues tend to be more labor-related, to say, have you sat down with management to talk and say, hey, our employees this or that, let's talk through some of that. But anyway, that'll be resolved through that venue. Like I said, whatever metric they look at to what any other person in the outside in would say, oh, the system's broken, there's a lot of people that can pass judgment being externally without knowing the full operation, and that's why I've tried today to lay out what we feel is happening. And if there's, if we need to continue to take corrective actions, like I said, we're working on this. We're not minimizing and saying everything's great. No, it's not. But to merit some type of takeover, I think that does more harm than good. And what I would say is, do they have that level of takeover? Is there an outside entity looking at the state system and some of their hardships and other jails around the state? We met with the commission. We told them where we were at about maybe a month ago to talk about. They seemed to feel that we were on track with what we were doing, and there was nothing at that point that raised a red flag like, oh my God, it's, the city's burning. The system's burning.
The union released numbers to us yesterday that in 2017 there were around like 40-something assaults against staff, and then this year alone there's been more than 1,000. Are you aware of those numbers, and can you talk about those numbers?
I believe they mentioned a number of around 1,600 maybe. I think I mentioned our numbers reflect about 1,200, so it is extremely high. Again, that's a range of assaultive behaviors that have occurred. Any assault on any team member for me is concerning. I don't know how it measures to 2017. Sometimes we may overclassify certain things for documentation purposes, to be more thorough rather than less. So maybe we're over-reporting certain stuff. I don't know. But yeah, I think I've added that we're seeing a higher profile of maximum security. So I think there is a correlation with the maximum classification going up significantly. I think, just to put it in context, Chief, I think a number we had talked about before is in the past we hovered around maybe 25% maximum classification, right?
Yeah, in my years with the jail commission, the percentages of a well-run jail should run about 25% max, about 50 medium, and about 25% minimum. Yesterday we were at 72% max, 22% medium.
Yeah.
And
So
Do you have enough space in solitary confinement, or is this like ICU beds in the middle of the pandemic?
well, we have quite a few beds that are in what's called COVID quarantine isolation. So those are taken offline to deal strictly with incoming
But if
inmates.
somebody out, one of these maximum folks, like, went, needed to be separated like this guy did on Monday, you have space for that in your jail?
We have space.
We have space.
Make
I do want to add, just from a policy perspective, similar to what I said about outsourcing, it's not always a good practice. We don't want to take some steps forward and then end up taking 2 steps back. I think the draconian era of just locking everybody with no kind of recreation, no kind of thing, it ends up sometimes being more hard. Keep in mind that about 70% of our population is pretrial. They haven't been convicted of anything. So we are going to look more keenly at how are they acting while they're with us. And as long as there's not any real like assaultive behavior, inmate on inmate or inmate on staff or things like that, then we may give them a little bit more leeway. I think it could be over punitive sometimes, and I'm talking just general. Because if we just had solitary confinement. Now, even if we wanted to put everybody in solitary confinement, that we couldn't do.
Got it.
But I want to say that the more serious maximum classification, it has created more of an operational burden on us. They act out. And when there's, suspending recreation because of COVID, visitation was shut down, is what do? Many of these folks there's gang issues, so you have to separate them because of, you can't mix in a max with a medium or in certain things like that. So
I understand that.
it's a complex issue.
With the political comments, everybody's going to jump on this, right? It's the largest jail in Texas, and some politicians say something. But for the record, are people just criticizing, or has anybody actually asked to tour your jail?
I haven't received any, we did receive a request, just a general one, from some state representatives over the summer. I think they were looking at the bail reform issue.
Nobody's looking at this.
But nobody has come and said, hey, Sheriff, let me come and tour the jail with you so that we could.
The guy who said state takeover has actually no idea.
No, I mean,
I just think it's an important note to make.
yeah, no, and I would welcome to come walk. In fact, I had a visit, a tour that I was going to give to a community leader that we were talking, hey, I'd like to come talk to individuals, actually one today and one that said, hey, I want to come and just give a few words of encouragement. We had a graduation event for a recovery team that we put for some of the inmates, and so a lot of them do take to the program and are doing well. We have a veterans tank that does well. We welcome people to come and look, because there's this image of this, it's not like that. And can it be better? Yes. The staffing is a concern. The assaultive behavior that we're seeing is a concern. If our courts would get moving and we could start even reducing by 200-300 people, it would help us tremendously. I'll tell you another my concern that we've been working behind the scenes on this is making sure, working with the judges to say, don't completely shut down the courts during the holidays. We have to be here. I think one judge is at least exploring having weekend hours and afternoons, just one.
And the average jailer in Harris County makes what? I think it's also important to note that.
Yeah, we're not one of the highest paid. What's the current about?
Entry level?
Yeah.
45.
45. We were looking at
overtime.
$40,000 to $41,000.
Yeah, now with overtime and stuff, and but at one point it was the equivalent of what a school bus driver would make in terms of. Now, I don't want to minimize saying, look what we do, but I'm saying very challenging job being a bus driver, I'm sure. But what I'm saying is in a correctional setting with all of this happening, and yet nonetheless, and believe it or not, I think some facilities are even working more hours. We've gone away from some of that, and we think by January everybody's going to be able to have a part of the weekend consistently, and so we are working towards that. It's just taking, I wish it would have happened yesterday, but.
Sheriff, could you just say the classification numbers again? You said there are about 80.
Yeah, we have,
and something.
as of
Just walk me through that again one more time.
Yeah, as of today, we have 6,261 maximum security level individuals. Now, maximum security doesn't mean that, it just means they may have some type of assaultive behavior, some type of high-profile situation. It could be maybe somebody, a variety of.
It's either an assaultive current or an assaultive past.
Yeah.
And
So-
Or a combination.
Yeah,
and how many medium?
medium, we have 1,981. I rounded it off to 8,800. That's not the exact number, I'm just rounding it off. About 8,800, you'll do the exact math, but 8,800 that are either medium or maximum. Medium would be in between, right? Like something maybe in the past, not maybe current, but something that's like a little red flag to make a medium. Lower, we're in the hundreds. Just we don't keep, they tend to cycle out
And
much.
there's been an ongoing debate in Harris County over the last few years about bail reform and, during COVID, we're trying to get low-risk inmates out of the jail. How is that working out right now with, I'm not phrasing this well, but you've got a big assaultive population. You're trying to get as many people out of the jail, I imagine, as possible. What are you doing to try to get those low-risk inmates out, and what kind of cooperation are you getting from the DA and from the judges?
On the issue of kind of bail, in terms of how it impacts population, I think a court ruling was made on the misdemeanor side. And so that deals with a lot of the lower misdemeanor cases where sometimes there's what they call a general order bond, which they are released just based on there are some caveats like domestic violence stuff where they're not automatically released, but some of the judges had already determined these individuals we pretty much want to release pretty quickly or right away, once the paperwork's done. So that's on misdemeanor side. Our issues aren't on the misdemeanor side. We don't keep many misdemeanors. I think there's already, again, I think having that court order really helped on that. So in terms of processing and booking people, it's very little. When it comes to the others, they just get stuck here. And we have individuals that are being held here with parole violations, with probation violations, some that are awaiting treatment programs, and because, and so until there's a bed available there, they stay here. Sometimes if the state gets backed up or COVID, then they're a little bit slower in picking people up. I think that what happens, ideally, and I've said this before, is we should look at risk, at people's risk when they're making bond determinations, and if somebody's high risk, that if somebody is, we do want to make sure we have room in jail to have those individuals. But if we could be smart with some of the population and they just have a non-violent case that even if it was a felony, but it was just a drug offense, like harm just to themselves, how is jail's not going to help them? We're just kind of in their pretrial. I think that we could be smarter on that. I've advocated for some of that in the past. I think that it was misunderstood when both the judge and I, a year or two, were saying, this is coming, we're going to get full, all these issues were happening. It got misconstrued that we were trying to do a mass release. We gave a population of about 2,000 people to say, look at this category for consideration. We didn't say release them all. We think these don't have non-assaultive behavior. These are drug-related charges that we're booking people on. Can we be smarter about these cases? We have a backlog. Now, those aren't my decisions to make. We could only advocate. We didn't get very far with it. I think there's a lot of room for that, but I'm not the elected leader over those areas.
You've got several hundred, low-risk people still in your jail. Can you get them out? What's preventing you from doing that?
We have over, I think, about 2,000 people that have a bond that's $10,000 or less. So the only thing keeping them is they haven't been able to come up with $1,000 or $2,000, 10,000. I mean, 1,000, about 2,000 people. I'm thinking outside my head just because I look at this all the time. About that have a bond that's $10,000 or less, and they just can't get out. To me, that's a money issue. It's not a threat issue because bond's already been determined. If this person had it, they'd be out. We're not talking of bond. Both sides, everybody has agreed bond should be about $10,000 or less. And even here, we have 1,981 that are medium. They're not even considered maximum. That means they're not the most serious. I would imagine there's some in there that, again, may be drug-related or maybe did something in their past, but nothing current, but they're in jail. I think that it really takes a more sophisticated discussion to get into the weeds on that, because too often it's so easy just to, I've always said that we shouldn't lead just with outlier situations and say, this happened, everything's bad. I think it's important to look at broadly, and I think you're asking the right questions. It's not just, we could throw staff all around, but if the court backlog got resolved, we'd probably have more than sufficient staffing now. It's just a matter of perspective, right? If our jail empty out by 500 today, wouldn't you be able to breathe a lot better?
Well, in relations to that, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, right before Thanksgiving, the 2 weeks prior, picked up 579 inmates. So we went from over 9,100 down to about 8,500 in about a 5-day period. And that give us time to come up for air. We actually had room to move inmates, to classify them properly, house them where we need to, make moves that we needed to make. But then I brought it to the attention yesterday to the sheriff, and in 12 short days, we're up 300 again. So again,
it's jail churn.
Shannon Herklotz, Chief of Detentions.
There's still churn. And so I think overnight, we booked, I look at this stuff all the time. I mean, I like to be hands-on. We had, I think, close to 300 people being booked overnight. So 300. Imagine, even in an era of COVID, imagine every day you have 300 new guests coming in, you know, that don't want to be here. They're upset. They have mental issues. They have drug issues. About 7% of our population is self-described as homeless. We have about 20 pregnant women in our facility. We have over 60% that at least have some type of mental health indicator, meaning that they've been suicidal in the past. So you have a very just challenging population that we deal with when you talk about volume, and that's what makes it so hard.
This
So,
is not our peak time.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
our-
Believe it or not, yeah, that's a good point.
Winter.
Historically, this time things should level off because it gets colder, things like that. A lot of people are off, so there's not as much arrest. We're actually still at a high level. It starts peaking. Really, it'll start peaking again in March. So guess what? We think it's bad now. We're coming back to another peak time again with the start of a new calendar year. Things start warming up again. Crime sometimes starts going up. So thank you all very much. Appreciate you being here today. Thank you.